There are moments in life when you realize the line between neighborhood and dictatorship isn't as thick as you thought. I bought my house for peace. That's all I wanted.
Un cul-de-sac.
A backyard where I could read in the evenings. A kitchen big enough to make real meals and forget that I used to live off takeout and deadlines. After years in a cramped apartment, I was finally done with shared walls and parking wars. What I wasn't done with, apparently, was entitled people. At first, the HOA in my new neighborhood seemed harmless. Just emails about lawn length and overly enthusiastic Halloween decorations. I ignored most of it, kept my yard clean, paid dues on time. I wasn't trying to cause ripples, just trying to live. And for a while I did, until the emails stopped being about general reminders and started being about me. It began with a knock. I opened the door to find Mrs. Ellsworth, one of the HOA board members, standing there with a clipboard and a smile so tight it could cut glass. "Hi there. We just wanted to welcome you again and ask if you'd be open to considering a rental arrangement." I blinked. "A rental?" She nodded, lips pursed like she was sucking lemons. "You see, one of our longtime residents' cousins is moving to town. Lovely girl. Needs a place. And your house, well, it's just sitting there." "Sitting where?" "Empty. You haven't had guests in weeks. It's such a shame to let space go unused." I stepped out onto the porch, heart already speeding up. "You're referring to my home?" She smiled again. "We just thought, maybe a temporary lease? 6 months. We've already drafted some paperwork." I laughed. Out loud. Not because it was funny, but because I thought it had to be a joke.
No.
Mrs. Ellsworth blinked, clearly unaccustomed to resistance. "Excuse me? I'm not interested. This is my home. I live here. Alone. I bought it. I pay for it. I don't want roommates. Especially not strangers." Her smile faltered. "Well, you should know that our community prides itself on openness and shared opportunity. I'm not a hotel." She sniffed, adjusted her collar, and said, "Well, I hope this isn't the final word. We wouldn't want this to become complicated." That was week 1. Week 2, I received a formal letter from the HOA citing community contribution requirements and requesting I provide a reason for refusal to participate in shared resource use. Week 3, I was told that if I didn't comply, I might face a communal adjustment fee. I showed the letter to a lawyer. She laughed, then told me to start saving every single document. So I did. Then came the neighborhood walk-bys. People I barely knew started stopping in front of my yard. Standing. Whispering. One woman even took pictures. I waved. She turned and walked away without a word. I asked my neighbor Greg, the only person on the block I vaguely trusted, if he knew what was going on. He looked uncomfortable. "I heard the HOA is trying to argue that you're violating underutilization clauses." "Under what?" "Apparently there's a clause that says all properties must contribute to the community economy. Usually it applies to things like shared garden space or rental properties. But they're twisting it. They want to force me to rent my house to someone's cousin. Greg nodded. They're saying you're selfish. I bought a house to be left alone. They don't care. They think you're disrupting harmony. The next week I got fined $250 for non-participation. I called the HOA office. Spoke to someone named Cheryl who sounded like she used exclamation marks even when threatening people. Hi there. So sorry about the fine. But yes, it's valid. How is it valid? We're working to increase community connectivity, and you've opted out. The board approved it. I don't opt into anything by default. Well, she said, sweet as venom. You kind of did when you bought the house. No, I said. I agreed to cut my grass and not paint my house neon orange. I didn't agree to house strangers on demand. Then perhaps this isn't the right neighborhood for you.
Click.
I sat in my living room for an hour, staring at the wall, wondering if I was insane. Then I remembered something. I'm a systems analyst. I know how to dig, and I was done playing nice. Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered every HOA document, every clause, every bylaw. I highlighted every vague phrase. I spoke with former residents. I interviewed a real estate attorney. I submitted public records requests. And I learned something very interesting. This particular HOA had a history. In the past 3 years, they'd pushed out 5 homeowners.
All solo residents.
All labeled as non-contributors. In every case, fines had been issued. Pressure had been applied. One had even filed a harassment complaint that mysteriously vanished. So I started recording. Every conversation. Every knock. Every note on my door. Then I showed up at the next HOA meeting, dressed in a blazer, holding a folder of receipts. Mrs. Ellsworth blinked when she saw me. I thought you weren't interested in board business. I wasn't. Now I am. They gave me 3 minutes to speak. I took 10. I read aloud every clause they'd violated. I cited case law about private property misuse and harassment. I named the exact civil rights office I'd contacted. And then I passed out printed copies of a letter from my attorney stating that any further attempt to force cohabitation, impose illegal fines, or harass me through community guidelines would result in legal action. Silence. Mrs. Ellsworth tried to recover. We were only trying to help. I turned to the crowd. Anyone here feel helped? Several heads shook. Greg even muttered, "Hell no." I smiled. Good. Then we're clear. The next day, my fines were dropped. The week after, the cousin found another place. And by the end of the month, 2 other residents filed independent complaints about HOA abuse of power. Mrs. Ellsworth resigned. Cheryl disappeared. And peace returned. But it wasn't the same. Because now I knew how quickly comfort becomes control. And how important it is to say no before someone decides that silence means yes. So I stayed. In my house. Alone. And unbothered. Not because I hate people, but because no one has the right to tell you how to live in a space you built yourself. Let them call you selfish. Let them call you difficult. As long as you remember that your peace doesn't require their permission.